5 years ago, I got a call from my friend Daniel. He told me he had seen my wife go into a hotel with a man and was currently waiting outside the building. I asked for the address and rushed over, boiling with a fury that felt like it would consume me from the inside out. The front desk clerk was a young woman in her early 20s, barely out of her teens. She blocked my path hesitantly, her eyes wide with apprehension, refusing to tell me which room my wife was in. I swallowed the burning anger, trying to maintain a semblance of calm, and pulled $500 from my wallet, pressing it into her hand. "Don't worry," I said, my voice tight. "No one will cause you any trouble. Just give me their room key card." "I'm sorry," she stammered, pushing the money back. "Our hotel policy prevents us from disclosing guest information." Her arm, still trying to bar my way, trembled slightly. "What the hell are you doing?" Daniel's patience snapped. He pointed at the girl, his face contorted in a mask of frustration and rage. "Are you going to give him the card or not? If you don't, I'll call the police right now and report your hotel for prostitution. My brother-in-law is a cop. Want to test me?" After a tense, brief standoff, the young clerk, clearly intimidated, handed me the key card. Each step I took climbing the stairs felt like I was stepping on my own heart. My wife, Claire, and I had met through a mutual acquaintance setting us up. She was undeniably beautiful, fair-skinned, slender, with a grace in her movements and speech that was always proper, always composed. In the years we had been married, we rarely argued. My parents weren't in the best health, and every time they were hospitalized, she was the one who stayed by their side, caring for them diligently. If Daniel hadn't shown me those damning photos, hadn't caught them red-handed, I would have sworn on my life that she would never do such a thing. Reaching the door of the hotel room, Daniel moved to insert the key card. But just as he did, I grabbed his hand, stopping him cold. "What the hell?" Daniel exclaimed, startled by my sudden action. "Don't open the door," I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "Let's just go." "Are you kidding me?" Daniel stared at me, disbelief and disappointment warring on his face. "What kind of man are you? Your wife is in there, right now with another guy? Where's your damn pride? Where's your backbone?" "My friend of 15 years, Daniel cursed me, shaking his head as if he couldn't recognize me. I didn't answer. I simply turned and pulled Daniel with me, walking back down the stairs. The cold night wind whipped across our faces as we emerged from the hotel lobby, leaving us both pale and chilled to the bone. I didn't know how I was supposed to face her. The thought of seeing my wife, naked and entangled, with another man, made my stomach churn. I felt like I would faint from sheer rage and disgust. Besides, Daniel had a temper, a history of acting impulsively when provoked. What if he lost control, if things escalated and someone got seriously hurt, or worse? I couldn't risk dragging my friend into that kind of mess. I was like a snail, retreating entirely into my shell when faced with something unexpected, something terrifying. I had always believed that if I didn't see it, it didn't happen. This ridiculous, head-in-the-sand mentality had earned me plenty of criticism over the years, but I couldn't seem to change it. I even clung to a naive hope. Everyone makes mistakes, right? Maybe, just maybe, if I gave her one chance to repent, things could go back to how they were. Claire didn't come home until close to 10 o'clock that night. She looked utterly exhausted. She barely spoke, heading straight for the shower without even eating dinner. When she finally climbed into bed, I asked, trying to keep my voice casual, like it was just another ordinary conversation, "Why were you so late tonight?" "Just had some things to finish up at work," she said, stifling a yawn. "Had to put in some extra hours." "What happened to your neck?" I noticed a red mark, distinct against her pale skin. It looked exactly like a hickey, a strawberry mark. "Oh, this." She touched the spot, a flicker of tension in her eyes. "Must be my coat collar rubbing. My skin gets so sensitive in the winter." The excuse was flimsy, almost insulting in its transparency. A silent, suffocating rage built in my chest. I clenched my fist so hard my palm bled, the small cuts a physical manifestation of the wounds tearing through me. But I still clung to the idea of giving her that one chance, that olive branch. "Claire," I said, my voice deliberately soft, filled with a feigned vulnerability. "We've been married for almost 3 years now. I've always trusted you completely. So if there's anything at all, I hope you'll be honest with me. Just tell me the truth, and I promise, I can forgive anything." It was the biggest compromise I felt capable of making. She scoffed, turning away from me, pulling the covers up higher. "Are you crazy? What do I have to tell you? You're being ridiculous. She picked up her phone, dismissing me, scrolling through social media, pretending I wasn't even there. You bitch. I smiled coldly at her back in the dim light. You're forcing my hand. I got out of bed, grabbed the ashtray from the nightstand, and walked out of the room, closing the door quietly behind me. The long, calculated process of my revenge had just begun. Over the next few weeks, I meticulously laid my traps. I bought several small surveillance cameras, hiding them in discreet corners of the apartment, tucked behind books on a shelf, nestled among decorative plants, even concealed inside a modified alarm clock. I took her ID card and went to the phone company, pulling all her communication records, calls, texts, data usage. I cross-referenced them, building a detailed timeline of her movements and contacts. And then, just to solidify my good husband persona, I bought my in-laws an expensive massage chair, costing over 20,000 yuan. My father-in-law, Mr. Edwards, had been a teacher his whole life, suffering from chronic back and neck problems. He had mentioned it several times, and I had always put off getting one, always too busy. Now was the perfect time. Try it out, Dad, I said, adjusting the settings on the chair with exaggerated care. Just lie back, and I'll find the perfect angle for you. Why did you buy something so expensive? Mr. Edwards grumbled, though his eyes twinkled with pleasure. You haven't exactly saved a fortune yourselves. Money is meant to be spent, I said with a winning smile, pushing the chair into a more comfortable position. As long as you and Mom are healthy, that's all that matters. What's a little money compared to that? He leaned back, his face relaxing into a grateful smile. He was clearly pleased with the gift. Back when Claire and I first started seeing each other, after a few dates, she was always reserved, distant. She kept a noticeable space between us when we walked, and at the movies, her head would unconsciously turn away from me. One night, when I dropped her off at her place, I accidentally brushed her hand as she was getting out of the car. She flinched as if she'd been electrocuted, snatching her arm back, her eyes filled with a wary defensiveness. All of it made me think there was no future for us. But then, a month later, she surprised me completely by proposing marriage herself. I'm 27, and you're 29, she said, for the first time showing me a flicker of real warmth, linking her arm through mine. We're not getting any younger. I think you're a stable, reliable person. How about we find a time to register our marriage? I was caught off guard. Are you sure? I asked, a hint of disbelief in my voice. Marriage isn't something to take lightly. If I'm not scared, why are you? She said, giving my arm a playful squeeze. But you have to promise to be good to me. Oh, and my parents have two small requests. First, buy a house in the city, nothing too big, just a 3-bedroom. Second, my mom had surgery last year, and we owe relatives over 100,000 yuan. You'll have to help us pay that back first. She looked at me, her eyes soft and seemingly full of affection. It was the first time I had seen her look at me like that, and I was captivated. The requests didn't seem unreasonable. I readily agreed. Our wedding was a grand affair. We had so many guests the main hall was overflowing, and some distant relatives who arrived late had to wait for the second seating. Claire was stunning that day. Her wedding dress perfectly accentuated her figure, her back smooth as jade, her legs long and slender, her collarbones delicate. Her heavily made-up face held an expression of perfect composure, greeting my relatives and elders warmly, addressing everyone politely. They all praised me for marrying such a good wife. I felt euphoric, floating on a cloud of pride and happiness, and drank a little too much. Later, I went to the restroom to splash some water on my face, but a few of my college friends burst in, pulling me out, joking that I couldn't escape the party. As they half-dragged, half-guided me out, I glanced towards the staircase landing and saw Claire talking to someone. I called her name out loudly, and she spun around, her face deathly pale, her lips twitching slightly. What's wrong? I asked, my voice a little slurred from the alcohol. Did one of your friends show up? No, it's just a classmate from long ago, Claire stammered, her usual composure shattered. Tell him to come join us in the living room. I insisted, still trying to register the face I had seen. Oh, no. He has something to do. He's leaving now, Claire said quickly, rushing over to support me. I leaned around her, trying to see, and caught a fleeting glimpse of a man disappearing around the corner. It seemed odd at the time, but in my drunken state and the whirlwind of the wedding, I quickly dismissed it. On our wedding night, I was eager, pulling off my clothes impatiently and leaning over her, kissing her face. But she put a hand on my chest, stopping me gently. "Not tonight," she whispered. "It's that time of the month." "Are you serious?" "What bad luck," I said, my voice heavy with disappointment. "What are you saying?" she teased, playfully slapping my arm. "My whole person belongs to you now. What's the rush? You can wait a few days, can't you?" She laughed, her demeanor perfectly natural, perfectly convincing. Now, looking back, I realized Claire was probably lying to me from the very beginning. Every impression she gave me, every gesture, every expression, was a deliberate performance, a carefully constructed facade, like a snake hidden amongst flowers. You think it's just a colorful ribbon until you step on it and are terrified by its fangs. The day after the wedding, I cleaned the bathroom trash bin and found no sanitary napkins. Her underwear in the washing machine also showed no trace of blood. A week later, I took her to visit her parents and learned that her mother's surgery was indeed a minor one. More importantly, her parents had never borrowed any money from relatives. A month after that, she went on a business trip and supposedly fell seriously ill, staying away for a month to recover. She said it was kidney stones, but if my suspicions were correct, she went away to have an abortion. Son of a bitch. I gritted my teeth, the bitterness sharp in my mouth. "Ethan, have a few more drinks with your dad," my mother-in-law, Mrs. Edwards, said, setting the last dish on the table and wiping her hands. "Oh, and where's Claire today? She didn't come over?" "Oh, she had some urgent work at the company today," I said, smiling sweetly. "She said she'll come back to see you next week." Just then, my phone vibrated. I unlocked the screen. The live feed from one of the hidden cameras filled the display. Claire and a man were entering our apartment. She glanced around the hallway cautiously, then quickly locked the door behind them. Inside, she turned, and they immediately fell into a passionate embrace, right there in our living room. Later that evening, I returned home. Claire was in the bathroom, showering. Even though she had obviously cleaned herself, I could still detect a faint, unpleasant smell in the air. A primal scent, like animals after mating. I fought down a wave of nausea, retrieved the memory card from the hidden camera, and slipped it into my pocket, acting as if nothing were amiss. "Why are you so late tonight?" Claire stood in the bedroom doorway, towel drying her hair. Water droplets glistened on her shoulders, a pose she knew was alluring. "That massage chair is imported," I said, forcing a smile. "It took your dad a while to figure out all the settings." "Did they like it?" she asked. "Your dad said it was quite comfortable. Do you want to go shower? Get to bed early." Claire winked playfully, sending a clear signal she was in the mood for intimacy. She had brought another man into our home that very afternoon, and now she wanted to be intimate with me? My stomach clenched, threatening to heave. I felt a surge of revulsion so strong it made me dizzy. "Not tonight, honey," I said, feigning disappointment and rubbing the back of my neck. "I've still got a presentation to finish for a meeting tomorrow." I put on an apologetic expression. "Humph." Claire turned away, heading towards the bathroom to wash some clothes, her tone a mix of playful pouting and feigned annoyance. She knew I usually couldn't resist her when she acted like that. But tonight, she would be disappointed. If the bowl I ate from was stained with excrement, I would rather starve to death than use it again. I offered a few more gentle words, then went to the study and locked the door behind me. I copied the footage from the memory card onto my computer, lit a cigarette, and watched the screen with cold, detached eyes. In the years we had been intimate, Claire had always seemed perfunctory, like it was a chore she had to get through. Whenever I suggested trying something different, a more adventurous position or approach, she would flatly refuse, sometimes even calling me a pervert. And after we finished, she never lingered, always pushing me away quickly to go shower immediately. I had convinced myself she was just a modest, clean woman who wasn't comfortable with anything too wild or unconventional. Now, I saw how utterly foolish I had been. In the video, Claire did things I would have never imagined she was capable of. She was uninhibited, passionate, almost wild. And afterward, her face held a look of pure, sated desire, a seductive languor that made my blood run cold. My heart was ice. The air in the room felt thick, suffocating. I coughed, lit another cigarette, the smoke filling the small, enclosed space. I was writing the epitaph for my marriage, cloaked in smoke and silence. A week later, I found the perfect opportunity. When Claire brought the man, Mark, back to the apartment again, I called the police, reporting a break-in at my address and urging them to respond quickly. Hanging up, I rushed back to the building, moving as fast as I could. Neighbors, alerted by the commotion, gathered around my apartment door. The police officers stood behind me, telling me to stay calm, just open the door and step back. My heart pounded in my chest, a frantic drum against my ribs. I wiped the sweat from my forehead, feeling the heat of the performance starting. Then, I opened the door smoothly and stepped back. 3 officers surged inside, their voices sharp, shouting, "Don't move," and "Get down on the ground." Minutes later, the neighbors and I watched as a disheveled Claire and a shirtless Mark were escorted out. The air was thick with silent judgment. Everyone's eyes were on me, a mixture of mockery, pity, and anticipation of a dramatic scene. This was my moment. This was the performance I had meticulously planned. I couldn't falter now. I took a deep breath, channeling all my engineered rage. I lunged forward as if to attack Mark, but a tall officer grabbed me, restraining me firmly. "Calm down," he said, trying to soothe me. "Don't do anything you'll regret. Assault is a crime. We can sort everything out at the station." I struggled against his grip, wrenching free, and turned to face Claire, who stood with her head bowed, her face deathly pale and trembling. "Why?" I screamed, my voice raw, filled with a fabricated agony. "Why would you do this? What did I ever do to deserve this? Haven't I been good to you? Every penny I earned, I spent on you. Anything you wanted, I worked myself to the bone to get it for you. I didn't even smoke expensive cigarettes myself." I gestured towards the neighbors, towards the world outside. "Your parents needed that massage chair? I drove for 2 months doing ride shares, worked myself to exhaustion, almost got into an accident, just to afford it. What did I ever do wrong? How could you do this to me, with another man? Why? Why did you do this?" Even the finest director would have been impressed by my performance. My eyes were red-rimmed, my voice hoarse, my face a mask of anguish and betrayal. Yet, I deliberately refrained from touching Claire, from raising a hand against her. In everyone's eyes, I was the innocent victim, the good husband wronged. When an egg meets a stone, most people will side with the egg, as long as they don't get splattered with the mess. How could that woman do such a thing? Does she have no shame? I always said pretty women are trouble. This guy was blind to marry her. If only he'd found a good, virtuous woman, this wouldn't have happened. What kind of logic is that? It's clearly her fault. You ask me, these adulterers should be locked up. Exactly. Doing something like this in broad daylight, in their own home. They're animals. The onlookers whispered amongst themselves, their voices filled with righteous indignation. Even the police officers looked at Claire with a hint of contempt. Claire kept her head down, her body trembling uncontrollably. Whether it was fear or shame, I didn't know, didn't care. I glanced at Mark, still crouching by the wall. He was around 30, average-looking, with an unnaturally round belly that looked like a spare tire. Disgust churned within me. This was the man Claire betrayed me with. At the police station, after giving a brief statement, the officers asked if I wanted to press charges or settle privately. I had only one demand. I wanted to meet Mark's family, his parents, his wife, his children, anyone. I wanted to make sure he would never contact Claire again. After waiting for half an hour, Mark's wife arrived, storming in like a vengeful demon. Her first action was to slap Mark across the face, hard. She was a large woman, loud and rough, but adorned with gold jewelry, suggesting she came from a comfortable background. I spoke with her for about 10 minutes. We both expressed our outrage at the infidelity and exchanged contact information, promising to keep an eye on the 2 adulterers and make their lives miserable if they tried anything again. With that, the first act of my play was complete. Back at the apartment complex, Claire trailed silently behind me, her steps hesitant. I walked ahead without a word. Along the way, people pointed and whispered, their eyes following us. In this age of instant information and gossip, I knew our big news had already spread like wildfire. A few men I knew nodded sympathetically, telling me to try and move on, that she wasn't worth getting upset over, not worth doing something foolish. I gave them a cold nod in return, thanking them for their concern, and quickened my pace, heading towards the building entrance. The moment the apartment door closed behind us, Claire collapsed to her knees before me, sobbing uncontrollably. She cried that it was only this one time, that she had gone mad, begging for my forgiveness, promising she would never do it again. She wept, tears streaming down her face, her body racked with sobs. Inside, I sneered. Only this one time. My head was practically green with her betrayal. If I believed her lies now, I'd be buried in a grave tall enough for the weeds to reach 3 feet. I said nothing, just lit another cigarette, and then another, filling the room with smoke. Finally, I spoke, my voice flat. What was your relationship with him? We were high school classmates, she whispered, her voice choked with tears. We haven't been in touch for a long time. Did he know you were married? I pressed. Did you know he had a wife? We were drunk, she stammered, her voice barely audible now, lacking conviction. I was wrong. I stood up, walked to the bathroom, and splashed cold water on my face. When I came out, Claire was still kneeling in the same spot, her eyes swollen like walnuts, staring up at me, pleading, playing the victim, the tearful, repentant wife. It had always worked on me before. If I didn't know the full story, the extent of her lies over the years, I might have actually felt a pang of sympathy, might have softened and forgiven her. Let's both take some time to think, I said, my voice deliberately neutral, neither warm nor cold. I walked to the study and closed the door behind me, not quite slamming it, but letting it shut with a resounding thud. The most insidious form of imprisonment is moral obligation. It's a virus that infects every aspect of your life, and once you're caught in its grip, there's no escape. And the most extreme form of violence is silent treatment. It doesn't need fists, or curses, or even expression. It can utterly destroy a person's spirit. I wielded these two weapons with calculated precision. Claire became known throughout the neighborhood as the loose woman, the disgrace. Wherever she went, she was met with whispers and stares. In contrast, people offered me sympathy and kindness. They would use vulgar, demeaning language to describe Claire, urging me to divorce her. Some of the older women even offered to set me up with nice, good girls, sometimes saying these things directly in front of Claire. I relished seeing the expression on her face in those moments. A flicker of anger, her lips trembling with suppressed fury, but her entire body rigid, unable to utter a single word in her defense. She had lost the right to express her grievances. At home, our communication was reduced to the absolute essentials. I didn't go out of my way to make her life harder with overt cruelty. We washed our own dishes after meals, slept with our backs turned to each other in bed, and even our toiletries were kept separate. One time she accidentally used my face lotion. The next day, I deliberately threw the bottle into the trash can while she was in the kitchen. She froze by the trash bin, standing still as a statue for a long moment before finally turning away, using her sleeve to wipe the tears from her face. We talked about divorce a few times. My stance was indifferent. The apartment was bought before we married. The car was old and not worth much, and we had about 100,000 yuan in savings. If she wanted a divorce, I was willing to give her 10,000 yuan, but that was it. With the police report and the public spectacle, I knew she wouldn't gain much even if she tried to fight it in court. But deep down, I felt that wasn't enough. The punishment she had received so far was too light. I wanted to continue playing the role of the magnanimous, kind, gentle husband, maintaining a facade of decency towards the wife who had wronged me. Only then could I continue her psychological torment, her slow, agonizing emotional flaying. What I didn't anticipate was that Claire's tolerance for psychological pressure was weaker than I thought. One late night, she finally broke. She started throwing things around the apartment like a madwoman. Plates, the TV remote, her phone. The living room floor was a chaotic mess. Her expression was wild, almost manic. What are you doing? I asked coldly, watching her from the doorway. Divorce, she spat out, her voice hoarse, her eyes blazing. I don't want a single penny of yours. We're going to divorce tomorrow. She glared at me, her face contorted with a mixture of rage and despair. Are you sure? I asked, my voice level, a hint of challenge in my tone. Yes, Ethan. You're not human. You're an animal without feelings. I never loved you. Not really, because I knew deep down this was who you were. Your face is always a mask. Your every word is like a cold knife. I just made a small mistake. Why? Why are you doing this? Small mistake? I cut her off, stepping closer. Don't waste your breath, I said, my voice hard. I agree to the divorce. But not tomorrow. I have work. Friday. We'll go on Friday. She started to say something else, but I turned, put on my coat, and walked out the door. As the elevator doors closed, I heard her desperate, heartbroken sobs echoing from inside the apartment, reverberating in the silent hallway. The man was called Mark. He and Claire were high school classmates and had started dating back then. Mark was a troublemaker even in school, into gambling, drinking, and who Knows what else? I later heard that in the years that followed, he had made Claire get several abortions. Now, looking back, it made sense why she couldn't get pregnant after years of marriage. Her foundation was ruined. It was almost laughable. Every time relatives or friends asked about us not having children, I would take the blame, saying it was because I was older and didn't exercise enough. When Claire would feign concern and tell me to take it easy, we had plenty of time. I was so touched I could barely speak. The reason Mark and Claire broke up was about 6 months before I met her. Mark had accumulated over 100,000 yuan in gambling debts and fled south. Down there, he hooked up with a masseuse, and in a fit of anger and hurt, Claire had agreed to the blind date with me. Looking back, the man I saw on the staircase landing on our wedding day was probably Mark. I was just a pawn, a convenient fool. The 100,000 yuan Claire asked me for? It likely went to pay off his gambling debts. How fitting. Two kindred spirits. I gathered all the evidence, the photos, the videos, the phone records, the information about Mark, and put them into a file. I chuckled bitterly to myself. So, what do you want to do about that bastard? Daniel asked, pouring me a drink, raising an eyebrow. Forget it, I said, taking the glass. This is a lawful society now. Physical violence isn't worth the trouble. So you're just going to let him get away with it? Daniel looked frustrated. You know, a couple of the guys, Frank and Steve, heard about this the other day. They were ready to round up some guys and go hunt him down. I had to talk them out of it. I drained the glass and patted Daniel on the shoulder, a chilling smile on my face. Did you bring your laptop? Let me borrow it. After I sent the videos, a wave of exhaustion washed over me. I lay down on the sofa in Daniel's office and fell into a deep, heavy sleep. I don't know how long I slept, but the ringing of my phone woke me up. I fumbled for it, my eyes still heavy with sleep. Yeah. My father-in-law's voice, low and strained, came through the receiver. Ethan, you need to come back. Something's happened. A perverse amusement flickered in my chest, but I feigned ignorance. What is it, Dad? Can't you tell me over the phone? Silence on the other end for a few seconds. Then, a long, weary sigh. I can't explain over the phone. Just come back. We're all here, waiting for you. I leisurely went downstairs and ate a full breakfast. I glanced at the sky, mild sunshine, not a cloud in sight. I whistled as I bought a newspaper and hailed a taxi. Arriving at my in-laws' apartment building, I composed myself, wiping imaginary sweat from my forehead, presenting an image of a man who had rushed over in frantic concern. Mr. Edwards met me at the door, pulling me inside, his face etched with a guilt and self-reproach that was almost comical. Sit down, he said, his voice trembling slightly. You scared me, Dad, I said, dabbing at my forehead. I was so worried one of you wasn't feeling well again. The words hung in the air, and Mrs. Edwards, sitting stiffly on the sofa surrounded by relatives, let out a choked sob. It was a tableau straight out of a soap opera. Claire's aunts, uncles, and cousins were all there, their faces grim, their eyes fixed on me. They had undoubtedly seen the videos, witnessed Claire's shameless behavior with Mark. The shock and outrage must have been considerable. Mr. Edwards' hand shook as he handed me his phone, letting out another long, drawn-out sigh. I took it, pretending to see the videos for the first time, holding my breath until my face turned red, my eyes bloodshot. This was my golden performance opportunity, and I wouldn't waste it. Smack! I slammed the phone onto the floor. The screen cracked, a jagged line across the display. I remained seated, rigid, my neck muscles twitching. Visibly, should I roar in anguish, break things in a fit of grief, or slap myself, pretending to be on the verge of a breakdown? While I was calculating the best course of action, the front door burst open, revealing Claire's gaunt figure standing in the frame. Everyone turned, their gazes like needles piercing her pale, drawn face. The next second, Mr. Edwards lunged forward, grabbing Claire's hair. With a sharp scream, Claire crumpled to the floor. Mr. Edwards, a teacher all his life, had never felt such profound shame. With trembling hands, he slapped Claire twice across the face. Claire, disoriented, not fully understanding what was happening, just curled into a ball on the floor. Disgraceful, Mr. Edwards cried out, his voice thick with anguish and public humiliation. Our family is ruined, the shame. His body shook uncontrollably. The sense of victory in my heart swelled, growing almost unbearable. It took every ounce of my willpower not to laugh out loud. Claire lifted her head, her eyes meeting mine. I maintained my mask of shocked immobility. Mr. Edwards raised his hand to hit her again, but suddenly staggered. and fell straight forward, hitting his head on the corner of the coffee table. Blood blossomed on the floor, staining the carpet a grotesque red. Mr. Edwards had a stroke. I sprang into action, rushing around, paying fees, getting prescriptions, calling friends who worked at the hospital to secure a private room for him. Mrs. Edwards and the relatives completely rallied around me. My image as the dutiful, filial son-in-law was solidified beyond question. With a hero, there must always be a villain. Later, when I went to the restroom for a smoke break, I overheard Mrs. Edwards tearing into Claire. "You stupid girl, what possessed you to do such a thing? We had such a good life. Ethan is such a kind, hard-working boy. How could you betray him like this? How can your father and I face anyone now?" I peeked around the corner, seeing Mrs. Edwards poking Claire's forehead with her finger. Claire swayed like a bobblehead doll, her body a silent testament to her guilt. After Mrs. Edwards finished her tirade and went back into the hospital room, Claire's phone rang. She answered, stammering out, "Director Hayes." But she couldn't finish her sentence. Whatever was said on the other end hit her like a bullet. Claire's body went limp, sliding down the wall until she was huddled on the floor, completely broken. Her boss at the company had clearly received the video. To protect the company's image, her job was gone. She had been utterly defeated. I've always enjoyed playing rock, paper, scissors. It's strange, but whenever I played against someone, if I won the first round, I could usually keep winning indefinitely. The trick is to observe their tells before they make their move, how their fingers curl when they're about to throw rock, the expression on their face for scissors. Once you can predict their actions, you can always win. My marriage with Claire felt like a game of rock, paper, scissors. From now on, no matter what move she made, she would always lose. She would lose until the end of time. I walked directly up to her, looking down. "What happened?" I asked, my voice devoid of sympathy. She lifted her head, her eyes blazing with a flicker of accusation. Did you send the videos?" I scoffed, putting on my best innocent act. "These videos? I've never even seen them," I said, my voice dripping with feigned outrage. "How could I possibly have sent them? Do you really think I would air my dirty laundry like this? Do you think I have no shame? Why don't you use your brain, Claire? Who would have the most reason to film and send those?" Claire's body trembled. The defiance drained from her face, replaced by a look of agonizing realization and profound regret. She reached out a hand as if to touch me, but I recoiled as if she were diseased, stepping back. The hospital corridor smelled faintly of disinfectant. I sat down on an old wooden bench, staring at the floor, silent and unmoving. At 10:30 that night, the nurse finished administering the last 4 drip. Mrs. Edwards said she would stay the night to look after Mr. Edwards, telling Claire and me to go home and rest. "Mom," I said, putting on my caring son-in-law facade, "you're tired too. Why don't I stay here? You go home and get some sleep." Mrs. Edwards' eyes welled up. She squeezed my hand. No, you have work tomorrow, Ethan. Our family has wronged you terribly. Claire did. She deserves whatever she gets, whether it's beating or scolding. From now on, I'll just pretend I don't have this daughter." Tears streamed down Claire's face silently. She knew she was completely isolated. As we walked into the apartment complex gates, a woman lunged out of the shadows. It wasn't just Claire who was startled. I flinched too. It was Mark's wife. She grabbed Claire by the hair, her long fingernails raking bloody streaks across Claire's face. Claire screamed, a raw sound of pain and terror. A few passers-by heard the commotion and gathered around. "You shameless bitch," Mark's wife shrieked, raining blows on Claire. "Flaunting yourself like that. Doing such disgusting things. I'll teach you to seduce my husband." Mark's wife was taller and heavier than Claire and quickly overpowered her, beating her viciously. "What are you doing?" I shouted, stepping between them, trying to separate the two women. "Let go of her. You're pathetic." Mark's wife yelled at me, spittle hitting my face. "Your wife's been sleeping with my husband, and you're still here protecting her?" She was clearly beside herself with rage after seeing the video. "Are you going to leave or not?" I demanded, taking out my phone and dialing. "If you don't, I'm calling the police." The woman was all bluster. Hearing the word police, she scrambled to pick up her purse from the ground, glared at Claire one last time, and hurried out of the complex. I helped Claire up from the ground, supporting her as we walked towards the building. That woman deserved it. She's shameless. That man has a good temper. If it were me, I would have kicked her out long ago. This society nowadays, men and women just run around cheating. Who knows what's going on? The whispers followed us. Claire's blood dripped onto my arm, and for the first time, I felt how hot blood could be, scalding like boiling water. Back home, I knelt on the floor to clean Claire's wounds. I used a warm towel to compress them, then found gauze and bandages. My movements were gentle, careful. I asked softly, "Does it still hurt?" Claire couldn't hold back any longer. She threw herself into my arms, clinging to me, sobbing uncontrollably, burying her face in my neck. She had lost everything, her family's support, her job, even. The first love she seemed to cherish so much, all turned to ash in a single day. And only the husband she had always looked down upon, the fool she had married for convenience, remained by her side. "I'm sorry, Ethan, I'm so sorry." Claire sobbed incoherently, repenting, confessing. I believed she was sincere. I even suspected that in this moment, she might actually be falling in love with me. A triumphant smile played on my lips. I gently patted her back. "Go to bed," I said softly. "Get some rest." Claire held me tighter, her face, now bruised and scraped, pressed against my ear. Her breath was shaky, ragged. In her desperation, she probably felt a twisted sense of relief, believing that happiness, or at least peace, might still be possible, that I might still offer her a chance. But in the next second, she would plunge into the abyss. "Go to bed, Claire," I repeated, pulling myself away from her embrace. "I've already taken leave. We're going to get divorced on Friday." I released her arms. She stared at me, her eyes wide and vacant with shock. I turned and walked back into the bedroom, leaving her frozen in place. Of course, Claire couldn't divorce. She had lost every illusion, every backup plan. She was over 30, with a damaged reputation, a black history that everyone now knew about. What man would want her now? Her relatives and friends had completely abandoned her, emotionally siding with me. If she left me, it was questionable whether she could even support herself. So, she began to change, transforming into a completely different person. She became eager to please, to cater to me. She kept the apartment spotlessly clean, speaking to me in a humble, almost subservient tone. The woman who had never cooked suddenly followed recipes, gradually learning to prepare elaborate meals. Every night I came home, I would find a cup of tea waiting for me on the table, already brewed, its temperature just right, carefully measured. All of this, of course, required immense effort on her part. And there was the intimacy. She would dress provocatively, beautifully, and after the lights were off, she would deliberately brush against me, trying to provoke a reaction. One night, perhaps driven by a desperate surge of desire, she stripped completely naked, pressing herself against me. She was in her prime, her figure still good, her skin elastic. She made soft, seductive sounds, hooking her arms around my neck, trying to pull me closer to her chest. I didn't push her away immediately. I simply turned on the bedside lamp and said, my voice cold and flat, "Is this how you did it with that man?" That single, simple sentence was enough to extinguish the wildfire of her desire completely. Claire recoiled as if she'd been physically struck, collapsing onto the pillow, sobbing hysterically. "You don't have to force yourself," I said after a while, adding another blow. "We can get divorced anytime. You'll be free, and so will I." This sentence, delivered with the same indifferent tone, cut through her sobs. Claire went silent. She quietly got dressed, turned off the light, and lay on her side, her back to me. A toy. In the darkness, I smiled, a cold, cruel twist of my lips. During the day, I provided her with a basic allowance. In public, I continued to play the role of the understanding, attentive husband, helping her carry things, taking her shopping. For clothes, when we visited her parents, I was exceptionally solicitous, asking about their health, fulfilling any requests they had, solidifying their unwavering support for me. Slowly, imperceptibly, Claire began to wither. The suffocating pressure of living under constant scrutiny, the emotional and physical repression, began to take their toll. She started suffering from insomnia. The lack of intimacy, the denial of her own desires, turned her face sallow, dark spots appearing on her skin. Her temper grew volatile. She would often argue with strangers in the supermarket, but in front of me, she couldn't even raise her voice. Seeing her decline, her slow disintegration, filled me with a profound sense of satisfaction. 5 years passed. Her appearance had changed completely. If you saw photos of her before, you would never believe that the woman with the full figure, heavy dark circles under her eyes, and tired, rough appearance was the same. person as the slender, smiling, beautiful woman from years past. Now, Claire dressed carelessly, spoke crudely, and if you saw her on the street, you would think she was a middle-aged housewife in her late 40s or 50s. In these 5 years, the game of rock, paper, scissors repeated itself over and over. Every time she tried to struggle, every attempt she made to reclaim some semblance of self, I deflected it with a casual word, a cold gesture. Her position grew more and more pathetic, more subservient. My own appearance, in contrast, remained unchanged. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a man who was still robust, his face healthy, his hair thick. With a little effort, I could still look presentable. In truth, I had satisfied my own physical needs over the years. Daniel had a friend who owned a club, frequented by many young women, eager for attention and money. They were younger, and most were prettier than Claire. For a little money, they were willing to do anything I asked. And there was no risk of emotional entanglement, no fear of being deceived. This straightforward transaction, this honest exchange of money for pleasure, felt infinitely more decent, more honorable, than the fraudulent marriage I was trapped in. Coming home one evening, I saw a fresh bruise on Claire's face. She must have argued with someone at the supermarket again and gotten into a fight, perhaps even been beaten by someone's husband. She looked at me, then awkwardly stood up. "You haven't eaten yet, have you? I'll heat up the food." "No need," I said, my voice flat. "I'm going to bed." I tossed my coat onto the sofa and went to the bathroom to brush my teeth. For years, no matter how much she tried, how hard she worked to please me, I maintained that cold, indifferent distance. My responses to her were always minimal, curt. I never hit her, never yelled at her, never showed her even a flicker of care or concern. The fact that she hadn't gone completely insane yet was, I admitted, somewhat impressive. I drifted into a shallow sleep, only to be woken by the sound of singing. I fumbled in the dark, sitting up. The space beside me in the bed was empty. I followed the sound, finding Claire on the balcony, singing softly. It was an English song, the same one that had been playing in the restaurant the night of our first date. "I want to raise dogs, dogs and money. Stop threatening to leave town, and I'll stop running. We're good heart people, but why don't we show it? We're good heart people, but why don't we show it?" A memory surfaced. Claire used to have a beautiful singing voice. She had studied music for a few years. At our wedding, she had sung a song that brought the house down, earning thunderous applause. I had been completely captivated by her radiance then, so proud to be marrying a woman with such talent and charm. Now, Claire stood on the balcony, wearing ill-fitting clothes, the excess fabric draped awkwardly around her swollen belly, a pathetic silhouette against the night sky. But she was singing with profound emotion, her voice husky and raw, filling the late hour with a deep sadness. "We're good heart people, but why don't we show it?" She repeated the last line of the song over and over, tears tracing paths down her face. "It's cold out here," I said, my voice cutting through the quiet night. "Come back inside and get some sleep." She turned, facing me, and forced a smile. It wasn't the practiced, ingratiating smile she used now. It was different. It held a strange sense of release, of acceptance. "Ethan," she said, her voice quiet but clear, devoid of its usual subservience. "I know you hate me. I know everything you've done. It's all been to torment me. You despise me. I know all of it." She swayed slightly as she stood, extending a hand towards me. "But I don't blame you. Could you just hold me? Just once. Like you're tossing a few coins to a beggar on the street. I'm so cold. I can't take it anymore." Her tears fell onto the balcony floor, scattering like crystal shards in the dim light. The cold she spoke of wasn't from the weather. I understood that perfectly. I reached out my hand. I saw a flicker of hope, a fragile joy on her face, like a child finally receiving a long-awaited gift. But in the next second, her expression went blank, lifeless. I took her arm, pulling her closer, but instead of embracing her, I simply placed my coat around her shoulders. "Get some rest, Claire," I said, my voice empty. "Be careful you don't catch a cold." I turned and walked back into the bedroom, my face a mask of indifference. I waited for the sound of her crying, but it didn't come. I glanced back towards the balcony. Claire was still standing there, staring up at the night sky, her face expressionless. Then, slowly, she sat back down on the cold floor. The next day, the rain started. By the time work ended, it was a torrential downpour, coming down like bullets propelled by a fierce wind, hitting my skin with icy, stinging jabs. I fumbled with my key, unlocked the door, and staggered inside, shaking off my drenched coat by the entrance. I headed towards the bathroom, intending to find a towel. The apartment was silent. I dried myself off and looked around. Claire was lying on the bed in the bedroom, seemingly asleep. She must have caught a cold standing out on the balcony last night. I changed into dry clothes and walked over to the bed, reaching out to touch Claire's forehead to check her temperature. The moment my fingers brushed her skin, a shock coursed through me. It was ice cold. I gasped, staggering back, stumbling to the floor. I scrambled forward, my trembling fingers reaching for her nose. Nothing. No breath. Claire's face was serene, calm. A faint smile even touched her lips. For her, death must have been a release. My mind reeled, a tangled mess of shock and disbelief. I fumbled for my phone and dialed 911. The dispatcher's voice crackled through the line, saying it was a typhoon, and the ambulance might take half an hour to get here. They told me to perform CPR, chest compressions, mouth to mouth, until they arrived. I hung up, sweat pouring down my face. Claire's body was already growing stiff. She had no heartbeat, no breath. By the time an ambulance arrived, it would be too late. She would be gone. But I still had to go through the motions. Whatever happened, I couldn't let anyone suspect that Claire's death had anything to do with me. I frantically searched the drawers, looking for medication, anything. I rolled Claire onto her side, her face turned away, in case she had taken something and needed to vomit. I started pressing down on her chest with the towel, a futile, pointless exercise. Her body was growing rigid under my hands. My throat was dry, my stomach churning. I grabbed the teacup on the bedside table and gulped down the contents. She decided to kill herself, and she still made me tea. I stared at Claire's lifeless body, my thoughts a chaotic jumble. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I picked up the phone again, dialing 911. Outside, the wind howled. A tree cracked and fell, crashing onto a van below, setting off a piercing alarm. Hello. I managed to say, my voice hoarse. This is Ethan Miller. I called 10 minutes ago. My wife? She's not doing well. My throat was dry. I coughed. Our ambulance is en route, sir, but there are traffic accidents and severe congestion on many roads due to the typhoon. Please be patient. How much longer? The phone slipped from my grasp, falling onto the floor. A sudden, dizzying wave of nausea and pain crashed over me. My legs began to twitch uncontrollably. I finally understood. Claire hadn't just wanted to end her own life. She wanted to end everything. I struggled, stretching out a hand towards the phone, just inches away, but I couldn't reach it. My consciousness began to fade, the dizziness and sharp pain making me cry out, a desperate, raw sound swallowed by the storm. Outside, a lightning bolt split the sky, illuminating the room for a split second. I saw Claire's body on the bed, the faint, upward curve of her lips. It looked like she was mocking me. Rock, paper, scissors, rock, paper, scissors. A strange, distorted sound filled my ears, like a distorted nursery rhyme. The world around me slowly began to fade into darkness.